adding images and various other uploads to our app. Right? So maybe you want to upload a video or an image or a PDF file or some, what we call a blob of content. Right? It's not text like a person's name. It's meant to be content. We want to add that as an association to our models. Is that a question, Miriam?
I think what you're looking for is in add sample data stuff.
Yeah, that's it, but it's at the bottom, and that's assuming you have already added active storage to your app. So I'm gonna divert. I'm gonna come back. I'm gonna talk about how to add images, and then I'm gonna show you how you add them as sample data. So by default with our apps, we have this library called Active Storage. It is the image and video and PDF and whatever uploader that's now built into Rails. It's not the only project that can do this. It used to be you'd have to add a third-party gem to your project in order to do uploading. So people used to use libraries like Paperclip or Carrier Wave or Shrine. These are some of the libraries that you'll hear people talk about for image uploading. With Rails 5, we got some image uploading built into Rails. It's called Active Storage. It's not the most full-featured solution, but it is now bundled in Rails. So I always want to show you the thing that's bundled in before I show you a third-party thing. So if we look at our Rails tasks, you'll notice that one of the things that we have in here is Rails Active Storage Install. The reason why we have Rails Active Storage Install is that Active Storage is going to keep data about our uploads in a separate set of tables that we don't create. So it's going to create some migrations for us to add 2 tables to our system. So let's run Rails Active Storage Install. And what it's going to do is it's going to make a migration for us called Create Active Storage Tables. Let's go look at that migration. DB migrate. Where did it go? There it is. You notice it's creating 2 tables, Active Storage Blobs and Active Storage Attachments. Luckily, we don't have to worry about how these 2 tables work as long as we make sure that we've run this Active Storage install and the corresponding DB migrate. So these 2 commands, Rails Active Storage install and DB migrate. Oh, I've already done it. So ignore me because I had prepared for this lecture by already running Active Storage install and DB migrate. For you, this will run without error. For me, it's generating an error because I'd already done this migration. And now DB migrate. Nope. Ignore this part if you're watching this lecture later. That's weird. Rails DB drop. Rails DB create. Rails DB migrate. I'm not going to blast my database and recreate it. There we go. What it should look like when you run the migration is just this part. It should say create active storage tables, blobs, and attachments. Now that we've done that, we're at the point where we can start describing to our models which thing we want to have attachments for. So we have users and cohorts. Let's add them to which one did I do? Let me see which one that I had chosen. Students. So I'm gonna choose to add an image upload to students. So what's really nice about active storage is I don't have to add any columns to my database. I can just say that it has one attached. Let's call it a photo. So this teaches the student model that it has an attached photo we can upload and show. So there's two things we can add to a class when it relates to uploading. It's has one attached or has many attached. So if this was, we wanted a student to have many photos, we could say has many attached photos. And now we would be able to upload multiple photos of a student. The name here is Taco Tuesday. I could call it image. I could call it picture. It doesn't matter as long as I choose something that represents what it is we are attaching. So it does not require any more migrations because we're not actually storing that data in the students table, right? Active storage is taking care of attaching this photo to our student. So that's all we have to change in the Ruby side of things for the moment. If you remember when we were doing Rails routes in the very beginning, I said like, oh, look at all this stuff down here at the bottom. You'll notice that this is all active storage. So our app automatically comes with endpoints for dealing with all of our active storage uploads. We have ways to upload and create uploads and then show the values of those pictures. So let's figure out how to use those. Actually, first I'm going to commit this. Adds active storage migrations and model changes. So I had prepared ahead of time some code so I can just walk you through the various things. So in order to add image uploading, we've got to do a few things. In order to add image loading, we have to add a library to help us upload called React Active Storage Provider. So React Active Storage Provider we'll do with yarn add. This is going to be some React code to help us process the upload from the user and send it to active storage. So if you imagine a normal form for a student, right, we have their name and we have, what else did we have for a student? Their name, their address, their age, and their email. But now we want to be able to upload an image. The way active storage works is it gives us an extra endpoint to directly upload images. That endpoint is responsible for storing the image and then giving us back some information about where that image was stored. What's nice about active storage is we can store that information in multiple different ways. Locally, we're going to store those images as local files. In production, we're going to put them in the cloud. So active storage lets us upload an image and it's going to tell us where that image was stored so we can give that back as part of the form. So it's kind of a multi-step process. We upload an image to active storage, Active Storage tells us where that image was stored. When we post that form, what we're posting is not the image, but the location of where that image is. And that's what the controller will pick up and save. So it's a little bit of a tricky multi-step process, and React Active Storage Provider helps simplify that code. So let's take a look at what we had to change in our student details in order to deal with the upload. So you'll notice at the top, we imported a direct upload provider from React Active Storage Provider. So here what we're saying is we're going to upload something directly to Active Storage as part of the form. So you'll notice then that in addition to our form, inside of our form, we have now a direct upload provider inside of that form. So before, this form just ended. It was just form and nothing inside. We now put a direct upload provider inside and a submit button. So once we crack open this form component, we have to provide our own submit button. And then we're going to talk about what these other things are in here, the direct upload provider. Let's take a look at what this looks like now. Just so you can kind of see what? 921. Why don't you know? Maybe I'm missing a line here. Oh, these are comments about for some reason. And let's yarn install. The reason I have to do the yarn install is I was doing this on a branch in preparation. So I wouldn't normally have to do the yarn install if I had just done the yarn add React Active Storage Provider. So let's run this and see what happens. Now we should get this loading. Now we should get this loading. Come on, load. Waiting, waiting, waiting. Okay. So let's create a cohort. Uh-oh. Oh, do I have migrations pending? Thought I ran my migrations. This is what happens when I try and like do code ahead of time. Which is the earlier one? This is the earlier one. There we go. Now we're okay. Now we should be able to create this cohort. There we go. So let's see what our add student looks like now. Where's my upload? This should be showing me that's the edit form. Oh, let's do this. Gavin, 123 Main Street. I think maybe I only put it on the edit. There it is. I think I'd only put it on the edit so far. Right, so this choose file down here, this user interface is coming from this direct upload provider. By adding this direct upload provider to my form, I get a choose file, and I can add a file like this picture of a beach. And I get another error. That's this error. No, this is a problem with, let me restart the server. This is a problem because the image uploading provider goes to its own set of controllers that's not configured to know that it doesn't need this authenticity token, which is part of normal Rails forms, but not part of dealing with image uploading. So let me try this again. So now we have this image upload. So the direct upload provider here can be on your create or your edit. When the image is uploaded, let me upload a larger file so you can actually see the upload happening. Let's upload, do I have a really big image? No. Let me upload a video. It won't render, but you'll be able to see it upload. Right? Did you kind of see that upload progress happen in there? What's happening there is it's sending the attachment to Rails, and it's recording it. What it sends back is called a signed ID. So when the direct upload provider has a success, it sends us back an array of signed IDs. This is the information about where that upload was stored. We need to, in our form, save that information. So on success, we're going to set state of the signed ID that we got back from active storage. So this on success is saying, when active storage successfully saves that upload, tell us where. Give us back the signed ID, and we will save that in our state. Because then, when we submit, now our student is no longer just the form data. It's the form data and the photo merged together. So you'll notice that our Axios put or post has changed from student : form data to this code here that says take the form data and merge it together with an object that has the photo and the signed ID that active storage returned. Both those things together are what become the student. So the form data that we got from here and the upload that happened here. Merge them together and let that be the student. So this code gets a little bit more complex as well. You'll notice also that when we're uploading the image, let me find an even bigger file so you can actually see the upload happen. You see the percentage going there, 70, 80, 90, 100, and done. That comes from like a progress bar component. And that comes in this render. So I built a little mini component here that gives you the actual input and then little p tags while the file is uploading or there's an error. You can customize this to whatever you like. If you want a nice little progress bar with CSS, the component that renders that little uploader is here in a component I call default direct upload render. Right? And you can reuse this on every upload form in your app. Because it's generic, it has nothing to do in this case with students or photos. It's just a little progress bar that appears next to the upload submit button here. The choose file button. Right? And the way the percentage works, right, it just renders that percentage here. Errors get rendered here. So you can CSS this up any way you want. Right? So the things that we need in our front end is we need a direct upload provider. We need a little render method to show the user some progress. When the direct upload is complete, we need to save the signed IDs. And when we submit the form, we need to merge the form data and the photo being the signed ID. We need to merge those two things together. That's what this object.assign does. It says, take this object here and add this object to it, kind of merge those two objects together, and that becomes the student. And this default upload renderer. So there's a couple of things we have to do on the back end in order to have this work. The first thing was getting rid of that error that we saw. We need another file in here, config, initializers, where did it go? Application controller renderer, no. Where did I put it? Config, initializers, active storage here. So we have to tell active storage, direct uploads, please don't put that forgery protection in. That's what was giving us that error before, where Rails tries to secure your forms. For this, we have to tell it don't do that, because we want to be able to upload directly from our React application. The very last thing we have to do in our students controller, we have to add the photo field, the list of uploadable fields. So now it's no longer name, address, age, email, cohort. We have to add in photo, right? Because now we're uploading a photo. And in our JSON, we have to say, if the student has a photo and that photo is attached, please give me a JSON field called photo URL, which is the URL for that student's photo. This is what now allows us to have, if we come back, this photo. So I look now at the JSON that comes back from my student. Let's reload this page. Here is my student. So now I have the address, the age, but down here at the bottom, you'll notice I have this photo URL, and it's this long, jumbled mess of identifiers and then beach.jpg. This is here, the URL for where that image now lives. Oops. 3000. Right, there's that image. So on the back end, we had to, in the students controller, add that new field, photo, image, Taco Tuesday, whatever we called it, in the student model, has one attached photo. We add that here, and in the JSON we add this little bit here that says, if the student has a photo, and that photo is attached, give me a URL for it coming from the student's photo. This URL for is a built-in Rails method that, given any object, tells us the URL where that object lives. So if this was URL for student, it would be the URL API point for that student. But I don't want the URL for the student. I want where did active storage store that photo. And I want that back as a field called photo URL. Right? This here is a Taco Tuesday. I can call this whatever I want, but photo URL makes sense as a name. That seems like a lot, but once you go through the process for one particular type of thing, being able to add file uploads for other things is pretty straightforward. The hardest part is probably on the front end, adding in the direct upload provider, modifying state, and then merging that state in when we submit the photo. So if you're doing any kind of uploads, I think Garrett, you're probably the only one who is, let's just work together to step through this again in your project, because we're just going to go through those steps and merge them. It's actually a little bit harder to do image uploading with React than it is if we were doing what we call a monolithic Rails application, where Rails was generating our forms. In that mode, there's almost nothing you have to do because Rails does all of that work for us. Because React doesn't know about the Rails model, that's why we have to use some of these extra components to kind of teach React how Rails is expecting uploads. So it's not too much work, but there's a couple steps you got to follow.
I have two questions.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a video showing how to do upload on a monolithic application?
Not with Active Storage, because the last one that I did was with a third-party library before Active Storage came out. So since Active Storage has come out, we've been doing API apps with React. So I don't have a video showing how to do a traditional monolithic Rails application with Active Storage, but I do have one with a third-party API. Sorry, a third-party upload package called Shrine. So it's similar but different.
Okay, so like I wanted to, after my graphics, create a project that does utilize image uploading.
Mm-hmm.
So do you have any recommendations for figuring that part out?
I would just follow the really good Rails guides,
Okay.
because the Rails guides have in it a really good section on Active Storage,
Okay.
and it's really good except for it doesn't cover React, right? This got added Active Storage. So this walks through setting up your environment, then it talks about attaching files, and then it has a whole bunch of things in the bottom about uploads, and it has some examples of JavaScript, and I think it also has some examples in here of just adding forms. So I would look through here, the Rails guides on Active Storage. The first part of what I covered, I skip over the configuration part because you don't need to know how to configure it for Microsoft Azure and S3 and blah. It's really the middle part, attaching files to records, right? And direct uploads. It's those two parts from there. It's pretty much section 3 and section 9 if you were doing it without React. There's not a whole lot in here. Actually, I don't think there's anything in here about React. This video or the documentation for this library that we're using, React Active Storage Provider, the documentation for this. If you look at the documentation for React Active Storage Provider, React Active Storage Provider, this one here will give you some good documentation on how to do it. So if your project is still React, this video and documentation will be good. If it's a monolithic traditional Rails application where you're not doing a separate JavaScript-based front end, you're doing it all in Rails, then the Active Storage guide on its own is good.
It's like it's kind of like similar, not similar, but it's some of the same functionality as like Nearest, right?
Mhm.
So it's like a note goal gathering kind
Right.
of thing. So
Yeah, and it just depends on if you're going to do it all with Rails forms and views, but not an API style app. Then the straight guides will help you. If it's going to be a React front end and a Rails back end, then this video and or the React Active Storage Provider docs are the way to go, depending on which choice you make.
it sounds like if I'm doing it by myself, because it would be after like school's over,
Mm-hmm.
that I would need to do it monolithic, right? That would be less friction when you figure it out.
It depends, because we didn't talk about anything about how Rails manages views and how you manage forms. But if you read the Rails tutorial, the Michael Hartle Rails tutorial, he walks through how to do traditional Rails forms.
Yeah, I looked at the last course videos and you talked a little bit about it in there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in cohorts 5 through 8, that's what we taught is monolithic Rails applications. From cohort 9 through 13, we've been doing API style full stack React and Rails API. So like cohorts 5, 6, 7, 8 were more the traditional Rails style. Everything done in Rails with a little bit of JavaScript on top. Since then, we've been doing the split.
Yeah.
And before cohort 9, we weren't doing active storage because it didn't exist. So we were using something like Shrine. So that's why I don't have a video that shows how to do all of it together. But you could probably look at the Shrine video and just ignore all of the parts about Shrine and just think, oh, for that is active storage, and then the front end part is the same. So that could work too. Ooh. Anything else on uploading? It's something we probably should just do together once so you can kind of see how it works, because there's a bunch of steps to do. And then for deployment, unfortunately we cannot use the default deployment method for Heroku, because you'll notice that active storage is putting these files in a storage folder here. Storage, so here's all the places where it's storing all these images, right? They're getting stored here locally on my folder. The thing about Heroku I mentioned, right? If you don't use your app for about 20 minutes, it stops your app and then restarts it later. Well, every time it restarts your app, it cleans the entire disk. So all your uploads would go away every time, unless your app stayed up continuously. So when we get to deployment, if you're using image uploads, come see me and I will walk you through how to use Amazon Cloud, and I will give you a key for using Amazon Cloud. It's a very straightforward configuration change we make in this configuration file that says where do you want your active storage data to be stored. In test, we store it in locally, right? There's a local storage, and what we'll do is we'll uncomment this S3 portion, and we'll configure these secret keys to store the uploads on AWS. Because then your storage is separate from your Heroku instance. Your Heroku instance can start and restart, but your images will be stored over on Amazon, and that'll be the way to do that for production.
Can I sit in on that? Like if someone does.
Yeah, it's literally going to be telling him to replace these values in his file with values I'm going to give him. I don't go through how to use AWS.
Okay.
I have created in my personal AWS account a sub account for Suncoast with access keys that only go to one storage bucket on AWS, and then every cohort I delete it. So it'll work for you, and then like next cohort I'll just zap all those files, because we don't really go into all of Amazon and AWS. We used to use for production Cloudinary, but Cloudinary has too many problems where things don't work very consistently. So this cohort, we're going to switch to just using S3, and I'll just give you the S3 credentials. If you want to sit in with us when I walk him through that, you're welcome to. But I don't go into how to use S3.
And does it support drag and drop, or is that just strictly JavaScript?
It can, but you need another set of React libraries to be able to drag and drop the file. You can style. Where did it go? Did I close it? I must have closed it. Back. Here it is. If you style this, you can natively drag things onto this choose file, right? And that will upload. So if you style this as a big target, it will kind of feel like drag and drop. If you want full drag and drop, there's more React things you have to pile on top. But what a lot of people end up doing is just styling this image as a big target with some hover effects, and that gets you like That gets you 80% of the value for 20% of the work.
Yeah.
Something like that. Cool. Any other questions?
Yeah, I have a question. So,
Mm-hmm.
is the image stored at local storage?
It is, yes. It's stored in the project, but only for development. In production, we have to store it somewhere else.
And my second question is, can we use like form method, like post and input type, like as in like file?
I don't know completely understand your question.
So what I'm using for uploading file is like format. I can show you later.
We can talk about it after. If it's directly to your capstone, we'll talk about it after. What I'm saying, this form here is this form schema is all of this here. The choose file comes from the direct upload provider.
I see.
Right, and that direct upload provider comes from the React active storage provider. So this React library knows about active storage, and by putting one of its components in my form, I then get an upload. I get this choose file, right, where I can come in and choose a file, right, and it uploads this dog image, or let's upload this image of a friend's kid. And when I submit it, right, now that image has been replaced with the baby, right? But the way we treat this image is it's really, right, a URL to where that image is stored in active storage, right? That's the URL for that image. Rails, active storage, blobs, EYJ, FCM, blah, 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 blah. Right, that's active storage storing that image for us. So even though the file is stored locally, we always treat it as a URL, because in production, this URL will be different. That's when I was saying in the student JSON builder, I had to add something for the photo. What I'm adding is a JSON field called photo URL, and I'm asking Rails to generate me the URL where that photo lives. I'm asking Active Storage, please tell me the photo for the student, what's its URL. I'm going to add that to my JSON so that my front end can get the URL and make the image for that. If this was a video, right, I would wrap it in a video tag, not an image tag, and then I would be able to see the image or the video. Yeah? Make sense? Mostly this stuff for image uploading, it helps to have somebody with you the first time you try it. So I say, like, don't be stuck on some of these things if you're going to add something like this to your app. And unfortunately, I have not found a good guide to using this image uploader. I think the docs for this are decent, but they're not great. It took me a little while to actually get it integrated the way I wanted to, because it leaves out a lot of the Rails part that's needed. So I think, Garrett, just come find me the day you want to add image uploads, and we'll just walk through it again.
Yeah.
It'll take us probably an hour to get it in.
Yeah, maybe today I was hoping to get all the nesting and everything.
Yeah, I would say, yeah, work on the nesting first, and then tomorrow or Wednesday, let's get image uploading into your app. And same thing, Mira, if at some point you want to do uploading, we can talk about that as well. And just walk you through.
The nesting would be similar to the cohorts and students, just like,
Mm-hmm.
so I have courses, and then, because I mean, I thought there were going to be like, users would have many courses.
Mm-hmm.
I write that into the not active record, but
Mhm.
application.
Mhm.
Yeah, I wanted to sit down with you.
Right.
I should do that.
Yep.